Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me back again in Penang. As I've always said, it's always a pleasure to come to Penang. Coming to Penang is almost always like going away for a holiday for me. That is, every time, every time I drive across either of the bridges, I feel that, wow, this I really love it. Thank you so much for having me back. Okay, today, I did actually put in a topic today that was meant to be talking about fire appliance access and all those things. But okay, this great book here, it's done, it's printed. All right, so it's all ready. It was it was we signed it off for printing, final signing off for printing just 2 weeks ago, exactly to the day, just 2 weeks ago. And the printers did a very, very good job. And they delivered the first batch of copies to PAM, KL, Pusat Binaan, just last Monday. Right, so we initiated the distribution immediately. Yeah, so I did bring some copies for those who pre-ordered and who well, Pusat Binaan knew that I was coming over here, so I became the most expensive courier service. So I brought in some copies over there. Those are meant for those who have already pre-ordered, and your copies are there, right? Now, the note on this book, this is the third edition, as you all may be aware. The Guide to Fire Protection first came out in 1999. It was that long ago, and I was involved from it since that day until now. Now it's the third edition, and we think that this will probably be the last one in my lifetime. It just took us that long to put things together. And really, all the things that I've been saying and talking about, and all these seminars and all over the last 20 over years, I think most of it is really condensed into this book. So I'm out of a job from today. Thank you very much, guys, for all your support. I'm not alone. I'm definitely not the only person involved in this. If you read in the front page, there were a lot of people, committees. Some people, only a small handful was left from the earlier 1999, the first committee until now. There's only a few handful of people. We've gone through about 5 different bomber director generals of this book. So yeah, it has been a very, very long journey, and we are very happy to have been involved in this. Right. So okay. So and further to that, because now officially it's been published, and Pusat Binaan is the custodian of the distribution, the printing and distribution of this book. I've been placed on an embargo. Everybody has been placed on an embargo now. We will no longer be talking about this book or the contents of it until Pusat Binaan puts together a formal program. Right, we are in the process of doing a program with Bomba, a formal one that will then bring us through a series of courses, maybe you want to call it, that would bring us through to something official. Yeah. The original intention before we embarked on the rewriting of this third edition was that actually Bomba started with wanting us to assist them to formalize the Khusus Bomba for the firefighters to be implemented at Kuala Lumpur Baru. So we did. We actually came up with a lot of contents, and we passed it on to Bomba, and they're already implementing it in Kuala Lumpur Baru. Quite a few of us, architects, architects and engineers. We have been giving lectures at Kuala Lumpur Baru for the Bomba officers. So again, all of those contents are condensing here now, and everything is all in here. So the next step would be for Pusat Binaan and Bomba to start organizing some official courses based on this book. But of course, this book is actually based on the UBBL. Don't forget that. This is not the law itself. This is purely a guidebook to the contents of the UBBL and a lot of other things involving designing fire safety. Okay, so because I've been placed on an embargo now, so today we're going to talk about some things that are probably not exactly captured in the Red Book. There's just some other things. So there'll be 2 items here today that we're talking about. One is the soft copy. I've been placed on embargo, so I can't even release it. Because while we were editing this one, and of course, Bombard always gets inquiries from the different states. Every time architects submit plans, there'll be some inquiries. There's a lot of these arguments and things and all that, and things will. A lot of these queries actually flowed back into Putrajaya. So a lot of the queries actually came while we were in discussion and while we are in the workshop editing this book. So the knock on the door will come and say, ada satu query dari Johor, satu query dari Kedah, What? Then we look at it immediately and we start to sketch. Yeah, it's supposed to be like that. Then we reply. You see that a lot of these things actually lead a simple thing, a simple WhatsApp message. We just reply back to the bomber officer with a WhatsApp message with a sketch. It's being circulated. And we thought, my goodness. So anyway, it's not meant to be. This is not meant to be a money-making book, right? There shouldn't be any single author claiming ownership or anything like that. It's a public document. But the reason why we needed the bit of the embargo is just to ensure that the information that goes out there is the correct one. That is most important. Right? So, okay, so that's it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do today are two topics which may not have been in architects' radar. Right? One is fire-rated walls. Fire-rated walls, every day we talk about compartmentation, right? But there's some elements over here I'd just like to highlight. And then immediately after this would be on fire stops. Now, fire stops is definitely not in our radar, right? But I'll go through that one. Okay, so fire-rated walls. Of course, I'll just have to retain this. The Reform Bin bylaw is a prescriptive building code. We all know about concepts of fire safety. So firewalls is all about compartmentation. We're all fully aware of this. And we always abide to this principle that when we're designing for safe evacuation, we're talking about only one fire at one location at one time. But when you're talking about compartmentation, the purpose is to contain the one fire within that one location at all times, right? That's the purpose of compartmentation. And this is where compartmentation elements come in. So particularly on fire-rated walls, in the UBBL, we do have these 6 different elements that are specifically prescribed in the UBBL. We have party wall, separating wall, compartment wall, external wall. Then we have protecting structures, and we got partitions. So there are actually 6 elements over here. The common element here is, of course, the word wall. We are now talking about walls. So let's start with party wall. What is the interpretation of a party wall? This is something that we all do every day. Right? Okay. By the way, all of these slides are not my writing. They're extracted verbatim from the UBL. Right? So yeah, I didn't write anything on this. So party wall, by definition, in the interpretation of the UBBL, party wall simply means a wall forming a part of a building or used to be constructed for the separation of adjoining buildings belonging to different owners. And this is actually in, later I'll talk about that. Okay, it is in Bylaw 86. Now, Bylaw 86 is not in Part 7 or Part 8 of the UBBL. When we talk about fire safety, we always refer to Part 7 and Part 8. But this is in Part 5, Bylaw 86, and this is under constructional requirements of the UBBL. So in a way, it's not directly related to fire safety per se. Right? So a party wall is an element for the sole function of being a physical separation between 2 buildings belonging to 2 different owners. So therefore, Bylaw 86 actually prescribes, it doesn't prescribe fire rating, but it prescribes the physical qualities of a the physical qualities expected of a party wall. That is what clause 86 prescribes. It says all party walls will be generally, the first one is the prescription of thickness. It is expected that a party wall should be minimum 200 millimeters thick. That's number one. And it's to be constructed of solid masonry. So that's the base. You expected a party wall to be constructed of masonry and minimum 200 millimeters thick. Then, with the amendment to UBBL 2021, oops, I'm stepping into the boundaries now. Never mind. I'll do it quickly and then we'll stop. All right. So included in UBBL 2021, we've added this other clause. This is to just bring it up to date. Or it can be constructed of any other materials of various thickness, provided they comply with parts 5, 6, and 7 of these bylaws. And this is another addition to UBBL 2021, is to have an acoustic performance of not less than STC 50. Right, so these are the physical qualities regulated in the UBBL 2021, expected of that of a party wall. So it's a constructional requirement. It's really not meant for Bomba to tell you that, oh, I must have, you must indicate 200 mm thick masonry wall as a party wall. I know Bomba has been doing that. They're actually running out of they're going beyond the jurisdiction when it comes to party wall. Right? What Bomba should be doing, I'll describe it later. But as far as what you specify for the party wall, it is bukan Bomba punya pasal. Right? It is ours. And which authority will be the one looking at this? It should be the local authority, the AHJ, authority having jurisdiction on this. Okay, now what are the other, just on the third item, constructed of other materials of various thickness, what it means is that this one gives you a leeway that your wall need not be solid masonry. That means it need not be blockwork, it need not be concrete, it need not be RC. It can actually have a composite wall. And it doesn't prescribe that this should be cast in situ or should be wet construction or dry. You see, it doesn't specify any of them. All it just says is that it may be constructed other materials of various thickness as long as it all adds up to no less than 200 millimeters thick, and it has an acoustic rating of STC 50. Right, and the same bylaw, it continues. Such a party wall shall be made up of 2 separate skins, and each of the skins shall not be less than 100 millimeters thickness. They say, oh my goodness, just now you just said that the solid masonry wall 200 mm. Okay, you said it's made of 2 separate skins. No, it's okay because it says it's constructed at a different time. Right? That means a party wall must be minimum 200 millimeters thick, constructed of solid masonry. That means they're expecting a solid wall between 2 parties. But if you happen to be constructing the buildings at 2 different times, if you build a semi-D first without building your neighbor, and you're saying that, look, the owner of this semi-D is not going to pay for the neighbor's part of the thickness of the wall. Yeah, go ahead. You can construct 100 mm. Simply because until your neighbors come, that is not a party wall. That one is just an external wall. It's only when your neighbor come along, then it becomes a party wall. So your neighbor builds his half of the wall. That's the purpose of this. Number 3, multi-story residential buildings of reinforced concrete or other frame construction shall be constructed to the requirements of the bylaws, and the party wall thereof shall not be less than 100 millimeters thick. Aye? Now remember, I think we went through a lot of problem with Bomba. They're saying that you build an apartment. The apartment into party wall, I want 200 millimeters thick. And we're saying, in the world, Bomba is not even in their jurisdiction. Right? So this is made it very, very clear. If you're building a multi-story residential, i.e. a strata title or a multi-unit apartment of some sort, and you're building it really at the same time, and it's one single building, and you're only having different ownership of the different strata parcels of that single building, why in the world do you need 200 millimeters thick? You still need SCC 50, right? That requirement does not apply. But this one gives you the variation that you physically do not need that 200 millimeters thick. Anyway, it doesn't say that you may do away with 200 millimeters thick. All it says is that the party wall thereof shall not be less than 100 millimeters total thickness at any point in the wall. Right? So go ahead, you can build a 300 millimeters thick wall if you like, 200 millimeters thick wall if you like, but it cannot be less than 100 millimeters thick at any point in the wall. And number 4, no combustible material shall be built into the thickness of any party wall unless it's not less than 100 millimeters masonry or fire stop with an equivalent fire resistance period provided of such materials. So ultimately of course, you all have to remember the UBBL is actually a law. And law means you have to be written in legal speak. We have to be written in a manner that it can hold up in court. It can be used by the lawyers in languages that we laymen may not understand. So what it actually means is very simple. In this party wall situation, you shall not have less than 100 millimeters thickness of a non-combustible material. And it has to be a fire-rated material as a party wall. That is all it says. In summary, that's all it says. Right? And openings may be left in a party wall, provided that written consent of owners of the properties concerned are obtained in accordance with bylaws. And every opening in a party wall shall be reinstated to its original state, properly bonded therewith with the use of such opening. So, why do we have specifically this clause in a party wall, but we don't find this clause in, say, later when I talk about compartment walls or separation walls? We don't have this clause. Well, again, remember, this is clause 86. Clause 86 is in parts 5. It's not a fire rating requirement. So a party wall, we need a solid party wall. And for fire safety requirement, we do need fire separation between two adjacent parties, right? Now, when you come to a situation where the two adjacent parties agree that I want to connect, I bought two adjacent semi-D houses. For my big family, I want to break down the wall because I want one single bungalow. Well, what it means is that then there's no longer a party wall requirement here. The party wall, the functionality of a party wall ceases to exist if it becomes one single owner, or if the owners have got a consent that they love each other so much, they want a wall between the two houses. Right? So therefore, there's no fire requirement. It's not that you break down this wall, then you have to put back a 2-hour fire-rated door or an insulated roller shutter. No, it's not for that purpose. Right? This is only talking about the functionality of the party wall. You don't want a party wall, then the function of a party wall ceases to exist. Oops. No, never mind. Right, okay. Now we talk about separating wall. So separating wall is now firmly in parts 7, which means that now we're talking about fire safety requirements. So what is a separating wall? A separating wall means a wall or part of a wall which is common to two adjoining buildings. So you say, that's a party wall. Or why make it so complicated? Why do you have to call it a separating wall? Why don't I just keep it a party wall and then that's it, we all just do it? But I say, this is where the difference comes in. A party wall is actually a definition of element that separates two adjoining buildings, right? But when it comes to fire safety, fire safety says you got two different buildings, you have to separate it with a fire-rated wall. That's where it comes in. So you can have a separating wall function, but the separating wall may or may not be a party wall. Well, let's put it another way. If you have a party wall must be a separating wall. If you have a separating wall need not necessarily be a party wall, right? Which is why earlier we mentioned when a party wall ceases to be a party wall, that means the two adjacent owners decide that they are now one single owner, you can break it open. So if you don't have a party wall there anymore, then you don't have a separating wall, unless the separating wall is there for the purposes of fire safety requirements. Then if you want to break open that access between the party wall, you say, oh, sorry, this particular building configuration, due to its volume limits or due to its fire safety provisions, I actually need a party wall. Then you'll have to put back the fire shutters or the door into that wall, right? So let's be very, very clear. You have to recognize, is it functioning as a party wall or is it functioning as a separating wall? Okay, this is really not cool. So separating wall, bylaw 141, subject to the exception specified, etc., etc. The rest of it really just says that the separating wall. Press multiple times. Okay. Okay. Got it. Sorry, my bad. So if it's a separating wall, then you must respect that wall as a fire-rated wall. So then you have to talk about the passing of the flues and all that. Now, the other thing, so if it's a party wall, would you have a utility pipe or say any services passing from one building to another? You just don't have that situation, isn't it? You don't, definitely you will not want your neighbor's plumbing to be going through the party wall into your house, right? It doesn't happen, right? But if it's a separating wall, yeah, you sort of figure that a separating wall is serving its purpose as a compartmentation. But if it's a single building, you may actually have services crossing each other. So under bylaw 141, as a basically a separating wall, you have to preserve the fire integrity. And this is where it does say what are all the requirements of the prescribed minimum requirements of what can or cannot go through the wall, and when do you require fire stopping. So any separating wall which forms a junction with the roof carrier, etc., etc. Now this is where the extension of separating wall above the roof comes in. This requirement doesn't appear in the party wall. So in a party wall, all it says is that you must have a physical separation between you and your neighbor. It doesn't talk about anything else, right? But whereas in the 141, under the prescription of separating wall, now this is where it says that, say, a function of separating wall is fire separation. So this is where it says that if you have a roof going over two adjacent properties, the separating wall itself must form a firm separation between two parts. Yeah? So that means even the roof have to be separated. You cannot have the roof of a neighbor or whatever fire flame spread properties of the roof be continuous across to your roof. That's the purpose. Now, number 3, compartment wall. We just talked about separating wall. Separating wall is supposed to be separating fire. Now, why are we talking about compartment walls? Is the compartment wall a separating wall? Yeah, it may be. Right? A separating wall may form part of a compartment wall, and a compartment wall may actually be functioning as a separating wall in certain situations. So what is a compartment wall? and by inference the compartment floor. Means that respectively a wall and a floor which complies with bylaw 148 and provided for such purpose of bylaw 136 to divide the building into compartments for any purpose with another bylaw. Right, let's go straight into it. Generally, compartment walls are used for the purposes of first complying with, say, the fifth schedule. Fifth schedule defines fire compartment limits to your floor areas and to volumes for all the different building classifications. So when you need to subdivide a building into manageable fire compartment sizes, the elements you use to do that are called compartment elements, which is compartment walls, floors, and structures. Okay, it's never mind. Right, the following floors and walls must be constructed as a compartment floor and wall. Actually, what the way in which is to be better to be described is that these are the elements or these are the areas of the components of the building that should be compartmented, right? They should be fire separated from the other parts of the building. So a flat or a maisonette, in other words, every single occupational unit in, say, an apartment, in a hotel, in an institutional building, it must be fire separated. Any wall or floor separating a part of the building for any part which has got a different purpose group. Compartmentation of a basement. Right? That means it's the horizontal compartment, the horizontal element that separates a basement from an upper floor of a building. Right, then we have external wall. External wall means an outer wall of the building, not being a party wall. Notwithstanding, they may immediately adjoin a wall of another building. So external wall. Now, so there have been a lot of queries on this. Even from Bomba, there are some Bomba officers who say, hey, your external wall, what's your fire rating of your external wall? Huh? You must have a 2-hour fire rating on your external wall. They say, yeah, thank you very much. If I have a 2-hour fire rating on my external wall, that means I have no windows, right? You want me to put roller shutters on all my windows? Do these blinds need to be fire rated as well? So the concept of external wall is very simple. External wall means external. If a fire is burning in here, the fire burns outside. What is the risk? What is the separation between the fire here to outside? That's where the sixth schedule comes in. Okay, we all remember the sixth schedule, right? Very good. There'll be another 5-day lecture on that. So that's where the sixth schedule comes in. You see, so the requirement of an external wall to be a fire wall comes in from the exposure, the proximity of your building with the adjacent property or with an adjacent risk. So on the elements, on the surface area that you require protection by calculation from the sixth schedule, that is the portion of the wall or the surface area that will require fire rating. That is the way it works, right? It's not that all external walls must be fire rated. If all external walls must be fire rated, we no longer have curtain glass buildings, curtain glass wall buildings, right? It's obvious. Huh? So a curtain glass wall building means that building on the sixth schedule has got a very, very large percentage of opening that is non-protected. And then you'll find that, okay, the adjacent building has to be far, far, far away in accordance with the sixth schedule. Right? So external wall fire rating only applies to the surface areas that are required to be fire rated in accordance to your calculations in the sixth schedule. Right? And of course, when we talk about the elements that we clad on the external walls, that's where BS 8414 comes in. And we've already gone through that. So cladding on external wall, this is where BS 8414 comes in. So the BS 8414 has got, I would say it's got nothing to do with fire rating, but BS 8414 is not for the purposes of specifying fire rating on the external wall. When we talk about fire rating, we're talking about the fire penetration through the wall. BS 8414 is purely to control the flame spread of fire on the surface of the external wall. Right, so this would be read in conjunction with the 6th schedule. Right, it is not to be independent. You do not say I comply fully with BS 8414, therefore I ignore the 6th schedule. Yeah, so it doesn't work that way, right? This is for purpose of cladding or for if you're using sandwich wall construction like TMO, that will be subjected to BS 8414 Part 2. Right, so that is not to specify the fire rating of the wall. That is purely to comply with BS 8414. However, I do a bit of advertising. So however, right, if your wall is subjected to the 6th schedule, and you need a certain percentage of the surface areas to be fire rated, you can actually still use TMO because TMO has got 2 certifications. They got the BS 8414 Part 2, which is flame spread, and they also got the fire rating certification, right? 2 hours, right? Yeah. So you have to recognize that they're actually 2 totally separate specifications, right? Fire rating and BS 8414, which is flame spread. Okay, we're all very familiar with this now on BS 8414. Anything below 18 meters in height, we're not talking about the cladding below 80 meters in height, then you just go for class O, and above you go for BS 8414. This one refers to the height of your building. If you have a building more than 18 meters in height, it doesn't matter where you put the cladding, all cladding must comply with BS 8414. If your building is less than 18 meters in height, you may use, or you may just rely on a class O rating. Right, but in the context of what we're all doing now, I would say if you already got a material that complies with BS 8414 or a wall system that really complies with BS 8414, even if you're building less than 80 meters, specify that. Yeah, do not. If you already got your eyes on the system that complies fully, why not? Why not just specify it instead of reducing the spec and going back to just a class O specification? Yeah, next day they start extending beyond 80 meters, then you knock out it, replace the entire cladding, right? Yeah. So let's be fully aware of that. Right, then external walls, there's also this requirement of horizontal and vertical barriers, the external wall. We're all very familiar with this. So again, this is where the fire rating part comes in. So you may have a cladding on the outside. So I've got BS 8414 already. But don't forget, you still need to comply with 6th schedule, or even if even if 6th schedule is not relevant to your project, you still have to, at the very least, comply with the horizontal and vertical barriers on the external wall. These are the flame spread barriers. Yeah, and most times, the perimeter beams, perimeter masonry spandrels will make up these elements, and the cladding that you specify will be going in front of these elements. Right, protecting structures. So on fire rating, protecting structures where FRP is specified, you go for protecting structures. So protecting shafts, protecting structures means a floor and wall, or any structure that's supporting the floor and wall that requires the fire rating. So I think that's pretty obvious. And even in protected lobbies, any partitions having an FRP of not less than half an hour, etc., will require fire rating. And of course, we all know of elements of structure. Elements of structure, any member forming part of we all are familiar with this. These are the exact descriptions of what constitutes an element of structure. When we say your building is subjected to a requirement of a minimum 2-hour FRP, that means every single element of structure, that means any of these components in your building shall be constructed to having an FRP of no less than whatever it is that's being specified. And separation of fire risk area. Now, this is very, very specific. Bylaw 139. After all that we mentioned earlier in terms of where you apply fire rating elements, where you need compartment floors and walls, etc., etc., this is a special clause called Bylaw 139. And 139 says these are immediately prescribed as the rooms or areas that must be compartmented and fire separated from the rest of the building, i.e. they're usually utility rooms or high hazard rooms. They're talking about boiler rooms, repair shops, storage areas, LPG, transformer rooms, flammable liquid stores, shaft for electrical risers, a cold room. This is a late addition, a cold room. So if you're doing cold storage warehouse, that would then be regarded as hazardous, as a high fire risk area that must be physically fire separated from the other parts of the building. And the fire resistance shall be as specified in the 9th schedule. And any elements of structure that forms part of those fire separating components or holding up the fire separating components must be similarly fire rated. Good. So we're talking about FRP now. Fire resistance period, fire ratings. Right. How do we determine if these elements comply, if what we're specifying comply? Well, the first thing is that in the UBBL itself, we already have the full list of all the deemed to comply elements of fire rating. Yeah? But in any case, all of it comes from here. List of fire resistance. It will be in accordance to BS 476. Lawrence mentioned BS 476 earlier this year. Earlier this morning also. Now, BS 476 is on the way out. It's been around for too many years. There's been way superseded by the new EN standards and basically all the international standards and new methods of testing. All the testing, there are about 25 different parts of tests in BS 476. They're all kind of outdated, because sorry, it wasn't working. Oh, I see. Okay. Because the 476 is just very, very limited in terms of its application. Yeah. Anyway, I'll be talking a little bit about that later when we talk about fire stops. So now come back to the critical question. Party wall, separating wall, compartment wall. When is it a fire? When is it a party wall? When is it a separating wall? When is it a compartment wall? What in the world do we, how do we have to specify the buildings, we have to design, we have to specify the buildings. So how do we refer to that? Okay, so we go back to the specification. A party wall means a wall constructed to use to separate adjoining buildings. So the regulations to a party wall would then be, you look at the compartment, the 5 safety requirements. Under construction requirements, the only mention of a wall that's of any interest is that of a party wall. Under 5 safety regulations, there's specifications, specific specifications for how you construct a compartment wall, a separating wall. So as an example, if you talk about terrace house, Next example, if you're talking about terrace house, the wall separating between you and the neighbor definitely is a party wall, right? So you have to construct it as a party wall. It's a landed property, right? So what are the physical qualities of a party wall? 200 millimeters thick, masonry construction. Okay, that's it. Very, very simple. Then you'll have to also construct it as a separating wall. So a separating wall comes along with a fire rating, FRP. Of course, we all know if you build a 200 mm masonry wall, it already gives you a 4-hour fire rating. But the requirement for a terrace house, do we know what is actually the required fire rating of a terrace house? It's actually 1. If you refer to the schedule, for a single house, it's actually 1 hour fire rating. Yeah. And then for a single standalone house, it's actually 0. There's no rating required, which is why you can actually build your single bungalow house entirely out of timber and nobody will bother. Right? So if we talk about terrace house, technically, the house only requires FRP of 1 hour. So the wall technically is 1 hour. Right? This is where the confusion came in all these years. Bombay is saying that, the party wall has to be 200 mm masonry thing. Okay, party wall, 4-hour fire rating. Then someone say, no, if you use clay bricks and all that, maybe it's only 2-hour rating. What about plastering? Adding plastering? Okay, minimum 2-hour fire rating. It's nonsense. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. It's just that the constructional prescription of a party wall already by default gives you such a high fire rating anyway. So because of that compliance, none of us really bothered to engineer it any other way. So a separating wall, what would be the additional thing we have to construct as a separating wall in addition to the requirement of a party wall? The 225 mm extension, the fire barrier above the roof. Right, that would be the only additional element for the prescription of this wall. Right, and you will not be allowed, because it's a party wall, you will not be allowed to have any penetrations. Even though the specification of separating wall allows you penetrations, as a party wall, okay, sorry, you cannot do that because it's a party wall. Yeah. You cannot cross from one to the other side. Sorry. That's where the other clause, minimum thickness 100 mm law. No matter what you do, you cannot have less than 100 mm of a physical masonry or non-combustible or fire-rated material separating between you and your neighbor. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's correct. And also the STC requirement, though, really honestly, I have no idea how the local authority is supposed to inspect on the STC requirement. But because it's a law, and the law says the architect is responsible, so I suppose we have to start figuring out ourselves when we specify, at least do a precursory calculation on the STC value of whatever material that's left in the when you do all your hacking and all that, whatever material is left, first minimum 100 millimeters thick, just do a calculation. Make sure that at least I've got the STC value of no less than STC 50. Right? Then multi-story apartments. So you have the construction as a party wall. And how thick will this be? You can make it 200 mm. Nobody can stop you. But the requirement is minimum 100 mm. Right? And then you also have to construct it as a compartment wall. No longer a separating wall. No, a separating wall, if you happen to do a low-cost apartment, where the topmost floor, you save on the concrete flat slab, and you put a pitch roof on the topmost floor of the apartments, then yeah, then it becomes a separating wall, and the separating wall must go beyond the roof. Right, but otherwise, if you have a flat roof, then it becomes a compartment wall. And the compartment wall construction, the additional items is just ensure whenever the compartment wall joins another compartment wall, it's all fully sealed as what the name as what the term implies. Compartment means you have to be a fully fire tight compartmentation. And again, you're not allowed to have any penetrations. Why? Because it's a party wall. Then you say, if that's the case, why even bother having this prescription of a separating wall? Why we just say, all party wall and be done with it? No, there is a purpose for separating wall because it's a fire safety thing. So separating walls and compartment walls are to be used whereby you want to limit the size of your fire compartment, for example. Okay, one example where a separating wall really, really comes in very handy for us architects is like a case like this. Having a single building of this nature, you got the lower portion, you got a higher portion. So of a building, any references to the height of a building for the purposes of the specification of your firefighting shafts, and for the purpose of pen schedule, references to height of buildings, purposes of compartmentation. The taller your building goes, the smaller the limit of compartments are. So if you have a building like this, the height of the building is this part. This is one single building. So that component over there will be subjected to the same prescriptions for a building of that height. Right? This is very common in the case of multi-use building, for example. However, if you actually install a separating wall over there, then the height of the building will be measured. Part A of the building will be measured to that height. So the prescriptions of that building would be in accordance to that height of the building. Whereas for part B, the prescription of this part will come from the measurement of the height of the building. Why? Because we've got separating walls. Now, fire burns upwards. You don't want it to spread sideways. So if you can have a separating wall to prevent the risk of this building fire burning across that side, then this is like your terrace house. Your neighbor can burn down for all you care, but the fire is not supposed to come across to you. Right? So this building will then get the privilege of the building for whatever height it is. Let's say this building is less than 18 meters. That component doesn't require risers. It doesn't require fire lifts. And in terms of compartmentation below 80 meters for this purpose group, maybe you'll find that, wow, I've got 56,000 cubic meters to play with if I've got the sprinklers. Whereas on this part, this building will be, say, 40 meters high. You will have your firefighting shafts, you will have your wet risers, and compartment limits for certain specification may go down to 11,000 cubic meters. Right? So this is the purpose of a separating wall. But of course, it's a separating wall. It is not a party wall per se, so it's a separating wall. So you can have foods and pipes and all that going fire stop. Immediately after this, we'll be talking about fire stopping. But the openings that you put so that people from here will get access to the building unhindered, that one must have fire separation, i.e. fire-rated doors, fire-rated roller shutters, etc., etc. Yeah, it is not to say, but you say, as a party wall, the neighbors like each other, I'm going to open it up, I'm one big happy family. I'm sorry, you're using this element as a separating wall. So it must be fire stopped. You mean this wall inside there with windows cannot lock because it's a separating wall. Yeah. Of course, you can have openings. People can walk through, but you need the shutters. Oh, this one here. Yes. Yes, you can. Because there's nothing here. This one, you refer to the 6th schedule. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, like I said, this is not a party wall. This is not functioning as a party wall. It's functioning as a separating wall. These two buildings, like say in Penang, what's the equivalent of Malaysia, Jalan Taukit, Jalan Petaling Street, or Jalan Teguh Abdul Rahman? Penang. Never mind, Georgetown, Jalan Burma, or whatever. If A and B are totally different lot, different owners, this guy built this skyscraper, this guy, oh, three-wall shop house standing like this. Yeah, this guy cannot have windows up there, cannot have openings, because it is this guy's airspace, right? He can build that wall 100 millimeters thick on his part of the boundary. And when this guy comes up, he'll have to build his 100 millimeters thick on his side of the boundary. So that is the application of a party wall. If it's a single building, single owner, then it becomes a separating wall. Now, say this developer builds it this way, us architects will happily design it as a separating wall. You got all the fire shutters and everything in there. Then the guy go and subdivide the land, and he sells off this portion of the building to another party. This one becomes a party wall. Then you have to come back and put off all your utilities and running reinstate everything. But they say, but we are very friendly. We still want to maintain our accessibility from A to B. Good. We have to cut off all the utilities, but we can now remove the fire shutters. Right? Now, that's how it works. By the way, you'll have to seal up all your windows above. So just be very, very clear. Yeah. The physical requirement of a party wall and that of fire separation. Yes. That's the meaning. Yeah. It's basically to separate parties. Yeah. That's correct. And okay. Okay, now coming back to the origin. No specification, because a separating wall just says that above, if you have a roof element that continuous, you have to go above 225. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, maybe just use that as a basis. Yeah. If you have a concrete roof, it's already compartmented. So it doesn't come in. Yeah. You're talking about this little part here. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, I didn't put the measurement there, so I leave it up to interpretation. All right then. Oh, by the way, like I said, everything I've been showing you all these years, it's all in the red book. So all these diagrams are now all in the red book. Yeah, so yeah, it's great. So I'm really out of the job after this. Okay. No problem. All right, now leading to what we are talking about earlier on. So we have now had a full description, a full understanding of this component known as a wall, fire-rated wall. Now, back in 2012, 12 years ago, Bomba issued this circular. At that time, it was very rampant, where people were doing, say, very large-scale warehouses, or even these strata title shops, offices, and all that, where they have very long travel distances, single doors, especially the warehouses. Warehouses and these large speculative factories. And then they want to rent it out, either factory warehouse or whatever tenant they can get, they happily do it. And they find that they are exceeding compartment limits, they're exceeding travel distances and all. So to get away with it, there has been a lot of situation where people started using drywall, fire-rated drywall construction for this purpose. They put it up so on plan it look okay. We got compartment, we got horizontal axis, we got limits of travel distance, and we got limits of fire confinement volumes. The moment you get a CCC, new tenant come in, all these drywall partitions is being brought down because the drywall construction are so easy to dismantle and move away. Yeah, so Bomba had a lot of issues with that. And again, typical of Malaysian way of doing things. Instead of looking at enforcement, they said let's change the law. But of course, they cannot change the law, right? Because the law is the UBBL, the one we have to go through acts of parliament and go through committees like us. So what Bomba does is that Bomba issued a directive. Now, all Bomba directives are enforceable. They're issued under the Fire Services Act. So they issued this directive. I'm sure all of this, we are aware of this directive, right? Okay. This directive essentially dictates to you uh, the limitations of when we can use drywall construction. Now, we ourselves were taught out. We did a very, very small project just an extension of a production plant, very, very small one for one of our regular clients. And we just went ahead. We went for drywall construction because we were going for very fast metal construction. We did everything right. And we ourselves are caught by surprise because when Bomba came for the inspection, they said, they knocked on the wall. Oh, this is not masonry wall. I said, no, fully fire rated, 2-hour fire rating, and here's for certification and all that. So, for this wall, you cannot use drywall construction. We fell on our face flat. So, show me in the bylaw. I bring the bylaw back to front. Yes. Show me where in the world the bylaw restricts the use of a drywall on that element. And then he pulled out this circular, and I said, "Oh dear, I'm dead." Right? So we did talk, we did explain, and eventually we got it through on the basis of what we were doing. But this particular circular, this is in verbatim. It specifically tells you what you can or cannot do in the application of bylaw. So in a proscenium wall, yes, you are allowed to use drywall construction. Particularly they're calling it drywall construction partition systems. So by inference, it also applies to Trimo and sandwich panels. Anything other than masonry construction, anything other than concrete or block walls or clay bricks, masonry construction. In terms of protecting structures, you cannot use drywall. In other words, you're building your fire fighting shaft. The fire fighting shaft cannot be a drywall construction. No other leeway. A party wall. A party wall cannot be a drywall construction. A party wall says minimum 200 mm masonry wall. No doubt, we did add in the third clause that says that you may construct it out of other materials, provided it doesn't go less than 100 mm and you respect the thing. But this directive is still enforced. We did talk to Bomba quite a few times. They said, do we want to retract this directive now that we know a lot more already of this situation? They no, you still keep this because they just don't want the situation where people take advantage of this and start abusing the system. So the party wall, you're still not allowed drywall construction. Mm. 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 Yes, you can. You can. Yeah. Well, this directive is only talking about walls. It doesn't talk about fire rating enclosures or fire rating what they call it, the enclosures or the fire rating to elements of structure. It doesn't talk about that. This circular is particularly about walls because Bombard was addressing the issue where people were building drywall construction where they don't intend to have a wall there and then they tear it down after CCC. Yeah. Sorry? Ecotech panel is a cement sandboard, is it? That's considered a drywall construction. Yeah. No, because it just says tidak dibenarkan. It doesn't say which panels, but it just says that drywall construction is not allowed as a party wall. Yeah. 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 Okay. As I go down further, let me show you more things. Bombard never tells us anything about this. They just issue this directive, kept it kind of quiet, and they whisper us every time we send in the building plan. Or worse, they don't mention anything during the building plan. They whack us doing CCC inspection. Right, but anyway, this is what I've compiled, and this is what we would want to understand. So just going down further, compartment walls that are used to reduce volumes, walls for the purposes of reducing fire compartment volumes or for the purpose of separating fire risk areas or separating different purpose groups. Tidak dibenarkan. But they got the bracket there. Kecuali untuk drywall jenis solid dan infill. That's where we managed to get a little bit of a concession out. Yeah. So party wall, definitely no way. Because the intention is that party wall is like a permanent fixture. They're separating two adjoining lots. They are not in any way allowing you to have any indication that you might want to bring it down later. Right? But however, compartment walls, yes. But it must be of a solid and infill construction. And separating walls, no, it's not allowed. See, separating wall, just now party wall doesn't allow, right? But if it's functioning as a separating wall, yes, it's allowed, provided it is of a solid and infill construction method. Then external walls, yes, of course, external walls, all the thermal panels and all that, provided you first, if you actually need a fire rating to start with, yeah, but more importantly now is that you have to comply with BS 8414. Yeah. Okay, I'll come to that just a little bit later. All right. Yeah. Yes. Oh, concrete precast. Then you actually consider it masonry. Yeah. If it's a precast concrete, it's considered a masonry. There's a masonry wall. Yeah, masonry wall. Okay, now this is very important. So when it comes specifically to the references to bylaw 139, the elements of bylaw 139 is about specifically identifying rooms of special hazards, right? All of that is not allowed. In other words, if you specify that room as a utility room, or that's where you're going to store your LPG or diesel storage or the boiler rooms and all that, it has to be viewed to be permanent. You have to use a full masonry wall. You cannot use a drywall construction. And etc. etc. All this is a 139. Then filing rooms in an office. Yeah, go ahead. Use a drywall partition for filing rooms and hotel rooms. So hotel rooms, are these party walls or separating walls? Remember, there is that clause that's saying that every maisonette must be fire separated from the adjacent parts of the building. Well, hotel rooms are not different owners, right? So they comply under that prescription of a separating wall. So therefore, separating walls, yes, you're allowed. But of course, it just qualifies it a little bit more. Yeah. There should be no openings and there shall be no conduits and wirings inside there, etc., etc. And what they're really trying to say is that your method of construction must get bomba certification. Now, I'll come to that now. Okay, just still on that, protected corridors, yes, you're allowed to have it, right? Except where it involves slipping risk, of which then you require solid or infill construction. Then firefighting access lobbies, no, non-negotiable. You don't want a situation where today they see a firefighting lobby, tomorrow they come in, my wall is gone. Firefighting lobby anymore. Where? Slipping risk is like in hospitals. Hospital wards. Hospital wards, you cannot use you cannot use drywall construction except solid and infill. So it's like a separating wall, same degree of risk as a separating wall, not a party wall, but a separating wall. Like for example, if you're doing partitioning of an open office space where you start to rent out individual tenants, then these tenants must have separating walls. So when these tenants come out of their room to a common corridor, that common door will have to be considered protected, i.e. separated from the tenancy risk of the individual tenants. Yeah. So this one they allow because they know that, say, a speculative office environment, running distances, we really use 2/3 anyway. But once you start doing all this partitioning, these things will change over time. Right. So all Bomba wants to know is if you have that arrangement, you have to send in the plan for approval, or which they allow you to use solid or infill partitions for that purpose. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah. If you're doing that manner of fire separation, that means you're actually talking about horizontal exits. That means that wall will have to be kind of permanent. You can use solid and infill. By this prescription, solid and infill drywalls are allowed for that purpose. Yeah, by this prescription. Yes. Depending on the rating specified in the fifth schedule. Yeah. Yeah. Student hostels. Hostels will be under institutional. That means one hostel will be like a ward, a single hospital ward, for example. One hostel, you may fit in whatever number of students in there. Is limited by area and volume anyway. Compartment, there's compartment limit to hostels. Yeah. In accordance to this, yes, but it has to be solid and infill. Yeah. No, this is 2012. Yeah, I'll describe it a bit later. Yeah. Yeah. If you're really going for a masonry wall, you'll find already. Don't even bother digging this up. Yeah. Sorry, there was a question there. Was there a question or? Yeah. Between partition or you said foreign. What do you mean by foreign? Okay, this is the well, we are all talking about fire-rated wall per se, and this particular circulation is to limit the use of drywall construction as a fire-rated wall. Right. So here it is either Yes, that means you may use drywall construction, or no, where you cannot use drywall construction for this purpose. Or the one in the middle is that you may use drywall construction provided the drywall construction is of a solid and infill specification. Right? And I'll now tell you, I'll describe to you what they mean by solid and infill. Okay, then data. 12 years ago, they talked about big data. Actually, talking about server rooms. Yeah, but today we are using it for data center, data hall, the white halls. So yes, it's allowed. And then, oh, what else have we got? Okay, then operation theaters in hospitals. No, they do not allow. So it has to be masonry construction. Because they regard that as a specific fire risk, both inside out and outside in. So therefore, to summarize, okay, these are the requirements of line schedule in terms of the UBPL requirements of your construction, of how you construct the respective separating wall, compartment wall, or party wall. Then this is where we may use drywall construction, provided it's of a solid or infill specification. And then here will be the drywalls, which is not classified as solid or infill. It will have its fire rating, but it is not classified as solid infill. Now, how is it classified as solid or infill? It is at the point of you submitting it for the certification, for to the SIRIM test, and for the BOMBA registration, the BOMBA certification. So BOMBA will then look at your construction details, and they will give you the classification. And they will also specifically put in the BOMBA certification what are the limitations in accordance to this chart. Yeah. So I'll advertise a little bit for Trimo because we really appreciate your support. Yeah. For example, Trimo, the your sandwich panel, the one that's fire rated, BOMBA has given the certification. It specifically says solid infill and tidak dibenarkan sebagai party wall. So you can use it for any other application as a fire rated wall, but tidak dibenarkan as a party wall. Right? So that is the way in which BOMBA controls it. So it comes back with the manufacturer now. The onus is actually on the manufacturer. So the manufacturer wants their products to be used for a certain application. Onus is on them to get the BOMBA certification to allow them. So in summary, it works this way. If you just build everything strictly in accordance to the UBBL prescriptions, of course, all of these will have their prescriptions and you follow the UBBL 9 schedule, i.e. if you use masonry wall, you're home free. Yeah, it covers everything. But if you do decide to specify solid or infill walls, just be aware that it can be applied for partitions, external walls, protected areas that are deemed to be protected areas in the 6th schedule, compartment walls, separating walls. But, I'll just go on to that first. If you have a drywall that's not classified as solid or infill, you can really only use it for partitions and for external protected areas, external walls for the purposes of 6th schedule, protected areas only. And the rest of it, you will not be allowed to use drywall partitions. Right, so use this as your first reference. Then, if you want to go for the use of drywall and you're going to be very sure, go to the experts like BMI, and they will give you a list of the products with the correct certification to say, yes, my product may be used for this, but I'm sorry, my product cannot be used for that. Right? We hope that after we get this thing, now that this thing has just been launched, there'll be a few years for all of us to go through it. we hope that when Bomba is in a better mood, we might want to go back to Bomba. And then we want to talk, guys, let's be more proactive in terms of going for, instead of relying on the prescriptive based mode, we're all going for performance based anyway. Yeah, let's hope that we can retract this directive. They retract this directive, then we can go back to purely on a performance approach. Yeah, in terms of our specification and how we construct. Yeah, but as it stands, this is prescriptive. The circular is still in force, and Bomba officers are very, very what's the word? They're very, very what was the word they use? Not only aware, they really, really insist. Yeah, these are the few little things that they can catch the architects very easily. Yeah. Yeah. So I know. Actually, there is no jurisdiction over party wall now, but they were fully involved in all of this, and just put it this way, we won't want to argue, because it's not worth our effort. Let's just spend a bit more money on masonry walls first, and we'll wait another few years. We will want to continue our dialogues with Bomba. This is just one of the many things that we do want to rationalize. Yeah. At the moment, party wall is really not a problem, because I think everyone has really accepted that party wall, you have to do masonry. It's only all the other internal parts, especially like data centers. Now we have so many different things going inside a data center, and people get confused. But we use this chart. Okay, just stick to it first. Then there'll be, if we just want to avoid unnecessary conflicts at this point in time. Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah, you can use this. You can use this too. Yeah. So except for the 139 separations. If it's a 139 separation, cannot. You have to have masonry. Like kitchens is okay, because kitchens will be considered as a different purpose group kitchens. Yeah, but if you've got the LPG gas tank storage, no, that one, then you have to go to 139. And cold rooms is under 139. So yes, your freezer room, your cold room will require a separate room to house the freezer and the cold room. Mm. Mm. Yes, gas pipes are okay, because gas pipes are regulated by another classification. So gas pipes are exposed. Yeah, of course, they come with the gas detectors and shut-off valves, automatic shut-off valves. So they're talking about storage here in this case. If you're physically having a gas tank storage, that becomes a risk. Yeah, yes, that's correct. Okay, so this is on the fire walls. All right, so now you guys want a quick toilet break, or you want to continue? I will now go on to fire stops. Carrying on from here, we talked about the separation already. Now we go on to fire stops. Okay. Yeah. Continue. Yeah, I'm okay. Okay. Yeah. Mm. So this is the bad. Then the common boundary, so you know each other. Yeah. Is there a whiteboard here? No. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Why do I do this immediately after this? So that you just gather around here, lah. I'll do a sketch. Yeah. Too difficult. let's have a discussion over here. Yeah. Okay. So now we go on to fire stops. Okay. So we talk about compartmentation, separation, and all that. Now, for the utilities of penetrations that are allowed to go through walls, right? How do we do the fire stopping? Okay. Maybe a pop quiz. No, you don't get a free book. Uh, Again, I'm facing. Um, how many of you have actually signed on the borang, the C forms for a fire stop? I have. I definitely have. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. If you haven't signed the C forms, how many of you actually know your engineer have signed on the C form for fire stops? You have. Good. He signed it for the mechanical fire dampers or fire stops. 佢爆得了啦。Okay, okay. Okay, this is something actually very, very important. And Bomba has been whispering to us, say, look, now we're going to come down hard on architects now on fire stopping. Because again, these are one of the things that has been going on rampantly, that none of us have been fully aware of. So anyway, what I'm going to do here is first I'll run through what are the UBBL prescriptions of a fire stop and the basic requirements. Then I will just share with you my experience in a particular project that we were doing, of which we implemented specifications for fire stops. Yeah, I'll just share with you on that. All right. So first, again, okay, building bylaws is the prescriptive code, etc., etc. So bylaw 133 interpretation. A fire stop means a barrier of a seal or seal. Oh, it works. Okay. Fire stop means a barrier or seal which will prevent the retard the passage of smoke or flame within the cavity or around a pipe or duct where it passes through a wall or floor at the junction between elements of structure. I think the prescription is very simple. So where is a fire stop required? Separating walls. No opening shall be made in any separating wall which forms a complete vertical wall separating any buildings. But it will not prohibit the passage through a separating wall of a pipe. Right? So it says here, provided the pipe is not a flue pipe. So it's not something that you're going to be carrying heat. And it has to be anything other than a flue pipe or anything that will be carrying heat. And if the pipe is made of a combustible material, in other words, plastic, PVC, or anything other than a cast iron pipe or a metal pipe or a stainless steel pipe they just say combustible. They didn't specify the material. So if it is combustible, you're limiting to 25 millimeters. Here they never say radius or anything, but it's 25 millimeter radius. That means it shall not be that pipe that's going to go through, if it's made of combustible material, it shall not be bigger than 25 millimeter radius. Or if it's a non-combustible material, i.e. like a cast iron pipe or a ductile pipe or a clay pipe, right? It shall not be more than 150 millimeters. And it is fire stop where it passes through a wall. That one's a bit vague, but yeah. Okay, let's go on further. An opening in the separating wall which is necessary by means of escape from fire, then it shall have a door which of FRP no less than required of that part. That's where the fire doors come in, obviously. We have a door. We're all familiar with that already. Yeah? We need a fire door. And compartment floors and walls. No opening shall be made in any compartment, floor, or wall, with the exception of one or more of the following. So if you have a ventilation duct, other than the duct which is actually in an enclosing shaft, that answers your question on that, yeah, whether it's horizontal or vertical, if it's in an enclosing fire-rated duct, no? But otherwise, if the duct is not enclosed, if it's going through a wall, yes, we're fitted with the automatic fire damper. Okay, so that is what you're saying. Itu engineer punya pasal. Fire damper, we don't know the specification, but the engineer, it's our responsibility to ensure that the fire damper specified by the engineer is of the same fire rating as the wall that you're going through. So if the wall that you're going through is 2 hours, we should know, or we should find out, Mr. Engineer, the fire damper that you specified, what is the rating of the fire damper? With according to AS standards, etc. And the fire damper shall not have not less than the required FRP of the wall. Very, very important. Where it forms a junction with any other structure, the junction similarly must be fire stop. So here it implies that fire stopping means we have to preserve the same FRP rating, the same fire integrity of the element in which all these things are being through. Right? The fire stop shall not reduce in any way the integrity of the wall that is going through. Now, so 161 particularly is a clause on fire stop itself. Any fire stop shall, so it's a law already, be made of a non-combustible material. Or if it's in a floor or wall construction of a combustible material of timber not less than 37 millimeters thick. Why 37 millimeters? Okay, that's 1.5 inch, the old imperial standards. I will say, please ignore that already because these are all prescriptive standards. If it's provided around, so first, it has to be non-combustible material to start with. Second, now this is very important. It has to be, if it's provided around the pipe or duct, it shall be constructed as not to restrict essential thermal movement. And by implication, I will also add on, it shall not restrict thermal movement or mechanical movement. Right? This is to avoid the expansion that will break the opening, that the fire stop itself may actually end up being broken if there's an expansion, or if there's a mechanical movement, the fire door breaks itself into pieces and falls apart, or worse, the wall itself falls apart. So there's the restriction of movement. And any fire stop formed as a seal at the junction of two or more elements shall be made of a non-combustible material. Right, so we can start now looking at the various prescriptions. We've got non-combustibility, we've got fire rating requirement, fire rating to the same fire rating, no less than the fire rating of the wall that you're going through, and also to not to restrict thermal movement, to allow for thermal movement or mechanical movement. And in any cavities, like for example, curtain walls and all that, they also must be fire stop. But this one is now superseded by BS 8414. It will still apply if you're not going for BS 8414, you're building less than 18 meters, you're going for class O, good. Then this one will still apply to you, right? But that's why I would say, even if you're building less than 18 meters, if you intend to go for a cladding system, go straight away for a system that complies with BS 8414. Yeah, because 8414 covers this part. And okay, simple diagrams. You've seen all of this before. So a very, very simple diagram. All the green elements are the compartment elements or the fire separation elements. If it has a pipe minimum 25, maximum 25 mm diameter, if it's going through. If it's a non-combustible pipe, maximum 150 diameter, and the opening or the space between the wall opening and the outer surface of the pipe must be fire stopped. If you've got a duct going through, then the duct must have a fire damper of the required FRP, right? But what if this duct is actually an essential duct? What if this duct is, say, your smoke spill vent? The last thing you want is, in a fire, your smoke spill vent duct is cut off, right? So, yeah, that's why I say, please, on your engineers, right? Don't leave the engineers to their own devices. Check and check and check. Now make sure the engineers are designing and specifying things in accordance to the configuration of our building. So in the event, if this is an essential duct that must remain operational throughout the fire, then you can't use a fire damper. So here is where we will then have to have that the full fire rated shaft design, either as a shaft or a fire rated enclosure using drywalls, using fire rated what do you call it? Yeah, the encasement, fire rated encasement or fire rated enclosures. Yeah, and that requirement can be half of the FRP. If it's a fire damper, then you have full FRP. But whereas if you have ducting situation like this is the same principle as that of a protected shaft. Where you have a protected shaft, the FRP can be half of that of the specified rating. But I've said this before, I have stopped specifying fire rated doors of half the required FRP already, because people make a mess out of it. The first point of error would be your own office. The guy whom you've entrusted to do the door schedules, he would be the first point of error. He may make a mistake where a door is not meant to be half FRP, it's supposed to be full FRP. He copy and paste from the protected shaft door and he puts a specification there, you turn out half FRP, you're already wrong. The second point of error would be during the construction. Contractors may deliver the wrong doors at the wrong place, or they may order the wrong doors for the wrong purpose. So you end up having door of a half FRP where it's supposed to be full. Right? So in our projects, again, don't tell my clients, in our projects, I only specify full FRP doors, irregardless of where the doors are going to go. That way, no one can make a mistake. Right? Why are you bother saving money for the client? It's our on the line. Right. Similarly, for vertical penetrations, on the floor, exactly the same principle, except that when you have a shaft, if the shaft is not an element of structure, but the shaft is merely created as an enclosure to provide a protected shaft enclosure for the services, then the shaft may be half required FRP. And then you may remove the fire stopping there. Full FRP structures where the shaft is part of the element of structure. Then you have a ducting, and the ducting, you need fire dampers. Now, these fire dampers may then be half the required FRP. Now, when it comes to fire dampers, yeah, there will be quite a big of a cost difference between the different ratings. So this one, you have to be very precise. And this one, because the engineers are the ones specifying it, all the more reason why we have to check on our engineers to ensure that they're specifying the correct fire damper rating for the correct situation. Exactly. Yeah, because all fire dampers, anything related to fire safety measures, manufactured items, other than the items that are deemed to comply already in the bylaw, yeah, you must have these certifications. And of course, if you have a door in a protected shaft, the door itself, that element itself may be half RP. Okay, what are the properties required of a fire stop? Well, we have gone through. Let us recap. Right, first, the selection of products and materials used for fire stopping should take into account the size and nature of the gap. How are you forming that opening? If it's for, say, a sprinkler pipe going through a concrete beam, are you pre-sleeving, doing a precast sleeve for the pipe to go through? Or, sprinklers going through a concrete beam is not the right scenario because you're talking about fire stopping. Yeah. So, say you've got a water pipe or air conduct. I'll say a water pipe or say a ladder tray, the electrical tray, yeah, the electrical cable tray, right? It's going through the wall, going through a fire rated compartment wall. How are you making the opening? Is the opening pre-sleeve? Say you're going through a concrete wall. Are you pre-sleeving the opening or are you pouring in after casting? Right. So the size of the opening that you've allowed for this pipe to go through, or are you going to ask the bungler to go there and check open the opening, just whack the wall and then come up with whatever opening that he decides to go through? So the nature and size of the gap must be taken into consideration, and the anticipated differential movement. That thing that's going through, has it got potential of thermal movement, mechanical movement, vibration, or others? Proprietary fire stopping and sealing systems, including those for surface penetrations, are actually available. And these are, they have the appropriate fire resistance when tested in accordance to BS 47622 or BSEN 1634-1. In the case where there are minimum differential movement anticipated and where the gaps does not exceed 25 mm, the following fire stopping materials may be used without any specific test evidence. Right? Because the UBBL already has got a lot of materials in the schedules that are deemed to comply. Okay, so let's see what it is. In the UBBL, deemed to comply as a material for fire stopping is, of course, cement mortar, gypsum-based plaster, cement or gypsum-based vermiculite or perlite mixes. I would say very few of us have actually specified this because most time we won't have specified fire stops anyway, right? Because none of us have submitted the bottom Cs anyway. So we wouldn't have specified this. So what would the contractors be doing all these years? Cement mortar, cement mortar or plaster. I have seen, we have done a lot of retrofits of very old buildings, industrial buildings and all that. And there has been a situation where we went into this building, we ripped off all the ceiling, we looked at all the pipes, then we started identifying, we want to rip off all the old utilities. And I actually found newspaper stuffed around all these brick openings above the ceiling so no one sees it. So the brick walls are going up. The brick walls are all hacked open, very jagged edges. All these pipes are going through. And it's stuffed with newspaper. So we dragged out all the newspaper. And the newspaper, the post dates, you can see the days, you can read the old news from 25 years ago. And we thought, how, not only is not just not a proper construction material, it's newspaper, it's combustible. It's incredible. Anyway, so by default, unless you say anything else, when a pipe goes through a wall, what will the contractor do? I will fill up the hole. So fill up the hole is done by who? The Indonesian plasterer, whoever is plastering the wall. Your pipe has already gone through, he sees that I'm supposed to plaster with the wall. He just plasters around the pipe and he fills up the hole with his bucket of cement mortar. So that is what is happening. So these are all non-combustible, right? Good. and is deemed to comply on only one basis, that it's actually non-combustible. Now let's look at the other prerequisites of fire stopping. Still on this is on Malaysian standards 1183. So to maintain physical integrity of fire stopping, it should be reinforced with or supported by non-combustible materials. And in all cases where the gaps between elements that need to be fire stopped is greater than 100 mm, you need some non-rigid or flexible materials for the purposes of reinforcement. So if the gap is actually bigger, we can't really rely on the material, or rather the material must have some element of reinforcement, right? For example, cement plaster. Cement plaster is meant to be surface plastering on the wall, maybe thickness 12.5 millimeters or 20 millimeters. Some Indonesians, they may plaster up to 25 mm thick, thick or 1.5 inch thick. But when you stuff in a hole, how much can the plaster hold on its own? Right? So you need reinforcement. There has to be an integrity of the material. So yeah, I've said that many, many times now. But what are the specific properties required of a fire stop? Right, now let's look into it. Are these materials the one that's deemed to comply in the UBBL? Are these materials, according to the UBBL and Malaysian standards, non-combustible? Yes. No, not so quick. What do you mean by non-combustibility? Let's evaluate that. So BS 476 Part 4 has non-combustibility. This is BS 476 Part 4. And these are the tests that have already been done. That's why these materials are already deemed to comply in the UBBL. It's a very, very simple test, really. They got the two samples of the material, very small samples. One is the target test material. The other one is the base comparison. And they just test it. They put it in the furnace. Two materials. One is the target test. The other one is the base reference material. They put it in a little small chamber. They heat it up. It burns. And they measure the flames. They measure the temperature. And they measure the oxidation or the degradation of the material. And they weight it. That's it. And the material is that size. Right? So that's how they test non-combustibility. That's why I say BS 476 is really on the way out now. It will be replaced very soon. But for now, that is what we have in the UBBL. If you specify anything deemed to comply in the UBBL, okay, this is how they test for non-combustibility. So is cement mortar, gypsum-based plaster, gypsum-based vermiculite, is it non-combustible? Yes, it is. So yeah, you can use this material as a fire stop. You'll be using it by default anyway, without us specifying, without anyone looking at it. The person who made the decision and the person who did the actual work is the Indonesian plasterer that happens to be working on the job, and he's really decided for you that he'll be using that same plaster to fill up. All right, so okay, it complies with non-combustibility. The fire resistant period as the wall or the floor. We do not know. We do not know. Exactly. We do not know, right? How do we test for fire resistance of an element of structure? Is BS 4, how do we determine that? It's actually BS 4.6 Part 22. This is the test we use to test the sandwich panels, to test the 3 sandwich panels for fire rating. This is the test we use to test the clay brick walls for fire rating. Test those little elements. How do you test it using BS 476 Part 22? How do you test it? there's no reference for testing. This is how you test for 476 part 22. You have to build a full-size wall as a fire resistor in this furnace. So it's not a suitable test data, right? So has the material got fire resistance period as the floor wall? We do not know. We do not know. Third one, does it allow for thermal movement or physical movement? Does the cement sand plaster that the Indonesian fill into the hole allow for thermal movement or mechanical movement? We do not know. We don't know. We don't know. We really don't know. And can it support large gaps? How large a gap can you fill with the cement sand plaster? If it's a vertical wall, it may hold itself by gravity. But if you like to stuff cement sand plaster on the floor opening, we do not know. Right? So yes, a lot of exclamation marks there. So suffice to say, if we don't put attention on fire stops today, we will end up just that. And yeah, there'll be a lot of situations where it's not going to work. So how do we do that? This is what we need to do. These are all the proprietary materials already, and they've all been tested according to EN and ASTM standards. And Bomba, they have not exactly been hitting on this yet, but we have already been working on it. I've already applied it for all my current projects. And very soon, once they settle down on the red book, they settle down on a few other things, I think the next direction is they want to start emphasizing on this. Right? So let's get ourselves prepared. So we do have to take the effort to specify proprietary materials for the various types of fire stopping that we require. You can see that there are all kinds of different penetration. Especially with the kind of buildings that we're doing today, like data centers, for example. There are just so many penetrations. Even our very simple industrial buildings, there are so many services and things that have to go through. Right? So these are the standards that we will have to look out for. And a lot of these materials have actually got Bomba certification. The manufacturers have taken the effort to get nothing. So I'll just share you with an example of how have I done it in my projects. I hope that will help everyone to start moving in the right direction. For our projects, we're currently using all BIM modeling and Revit modeling and BIM common data environment information, because this one helps us a lot. Otherwise, it will be impossible for us to be able to track all the various the amount of complexity and specifications that we go through. BIM modeling and common data environment really assist us a lot in tracking what we do. So the first step is that we have to design the building law. We have to always start with that. And the way we do it is that we will not be waiting for the engineers to immediately be giving us the line diagrams and all that. Because by the time the engineers give it to us, we would have lost too much time. And the engineers will get it wrong anyway. There are so many different disciplines of engineers. The mechanical also, they got HVAC, they got plumbing and all that. And then they got the electrical. They may be coming from the same office, but actually the mechanical guy is not talking with the electrical guy, etc., etc. So they all come up with line diagrams that are totally different, right? What we have to do is we have to start our design as architects. Let us start our design. Let us be the ones who put a placeholding first for the engineers. Let us be the first one to take the lead to say that these are the rooms that we're allocating for you. These are the provisions. These are the utility corridors that we are allowing for you. We are separating electrical up here. Plumbing will go below the electrical. Let us do that for the engineers. So we give them the BIM model with placeholdings, right? So the engineers will then take the respective placeholdings. They need not know what the partners in the office are doing. It doesn't matter, because we are the ones giving them particular placeholdings for them to start their line diagram designs, right? So we are avoiding the clash in the first place. So placeholders and conceptual design models is what we do. Then from there, you lead on to when the engineers come back with the respective components in the respective placeholding that we given to them, then we look and we populate a model. Then from there, the placeholdings will be replaced with engineering elements as the design progresses and develops. Right? And then from there, you start to see the population of where physical utilities will start to cross. The basic level first, where we have the compartmentation, we know, okay, a certain corridor has to go through there. Okay, this corridor or this placement is where we will have these things going through. So from there, we will then develop it into detailed components and the locations. Right? Then the second step, we then have to start specifying. And this is where we will have to rely on the suppliers, because we are not fully familiar with the technical specifications of the products, right? So we do have to talk to the supplier, talk to a few, so they can get a good comparison, so that you're not bound to one particular supplier. Most of them, the good ones, the big suppliers, they are very, very eager to help. Not exactly like BMI, they're an international company. They are experts in what they do. Talk to them. Let them educate us as to what materials that they have to assist us in our design. So from here, it is us identifying what are the various elements, the various components that we can apply and the purpose, what is the physical properties, so that we know the limitations of applications, and we start specifying. And very important, don't go any further if they can't show you this, because you'll be wasting your time. Right? Same, you walk to BMI, ask for the cert first, show me your cert, right? So that I know we are talking about the correct thing. Yeah, and then there'll be the bomba, the Lampiras that will describe it very clearly, what kind of tests they have accepted, and what are the limitations to the use of the materials. Certificate of approval for use of fire safety products. Right? Be very, very careful. Do look into the full details. The lesser manufacturers or the lesser suppliers may just give you one certificate for one product. Then they say, everything with my brand all approved one. No, don't fall for the trap, right? If you're going to specify more than one product or a few different systems, ask for the cert of every single one, because they're all tested differently and they all have the limitations of use. And when you assign the C forms, you do have to identify which are the products that you're signing on. Right? So be very, very careful, read everything, and very important, read the test reports, because they may come up with an overall certification, but you have to understand the full characteristics of how it performed under the test. On what basis did it pass? Did it pass narrowly? Did it just pass? Or did the results show pre-qualification that this one was tested in this manner that may not be appropriate for your manner of use? I'm not saying BNI, but some suppliers, they do tell you too many things. Like you walk in the showroom, you look at the car, it looks like an SUV. They say, well, this car can climb mountains. When you bring it home, you find that, hey, only got 1.5 liter and front wheel drive only. How to climb mountain? Yeah. So you have to be very, very thorough and be very, very specific, right? Let the suppliers work for you, because they want to sell you their product. Let them work for you. Let them convince you fully that their products are the right ones. Okay, then the third step, this is the hard work. We have to do the documentation. So all the talk is very easy. And this is where I start to take a holiday. I leave it to Ching Tai and I leave it to the guys to do the hard work. I say, okay, you guys do the hard work. So this is where the BIM documentation comes in. And this is really, it's really hard work. Okay, whatever. Okay, this PC has got the virus warning. Okay, never mind. Okay, so the hard work would be specifying and identifying every single location. This is where we start documenting. Now we have to start scheduling each of the fire stop by type, quantity, and location. And if you're using bin modeling, the tools are there. The Excel extraction tools are all there. Just ensure that you label it correctly and the data will be there. So it helps a lot. It helps our work a lot. We can achieve quite a lot in a given time. Right, so really, we have to identify every single cluster, every single location, right? Every single different type of situation of going through. We can reload different order blocks. Okay, right, thanks. Yes. It's okay. So yeah, basically just going through your whole design. Go through your whole design. Look every single corner, identify. Don't miss out anything. And then from here, the of course Excel sheets will be generated. The bill of materials will be generated from there. And it'll give you the location, the unique ID of every cluster of the fire stop that we're putting, the product type, the specification, the fire rating. That's also very, very important. How much fire rating are we expecting out of it? The dimension, the general description of the dimensions and size and the volumes, the types of penetration, and the quantities. Yeah. So all this will be generated after we do the hard work of documenting it in the BIM models. Then step four, of course, is the actual construction. Actual construction is where you start to see. Just ensure that the contractors are doing the right thing. Of course, if you have full BIM documentation and the contractors come on board, they are expected to fully continue with the documentation to bring it to the next level. A competent contractor would be able to do all of this, right? So the contractor you select is also extremely important. If they're not equipped to do it this way, forget about them. Don't disqualify them. So there are all the different types you can see here: the collars, the seals, the mixed blocks, the mixed blocks, the composites. Composites are where, like for example, this one here, the slab opening is actually that size. So we allow free movement of the installation of all the pipes first. When the pipes come in, then we need to actually construct the frame. We'll need the reinforcement in there for the blocks to go in. We need the bottom plate at the bottom as part of the holding structure. And on top, when we're done, we need these additional plates for the surface wear protection. Right? Also, similar composites like that. Like this tray over here, you can see how it's done. This is halfway. We haven't finished. The plumbing is still going in. The cables are still going in. And when it's finished, it'll be sealed in that manner. Right. So, okay, after the construction, then what's the next step? Next, of course, is the inspection. Why? Because this is the time we have to start signing for the C forms already. So we do have to ensure that every single component is put in correctly. And this is how we do the tagging for the purposes. All right. For this particular project, when we first started it off, the intention was that we bring it all the way to LOD 500 with the supplier giving us a QR code. So instead of this handwritten tag, they're supposed to give us a QR code so that the future maintenance people can scan the QR code and it'll give you the full, just like earlier on, I show you the example on the BIM model. When you click on it, it gives you all the description, quantity, size, location, etc., etc. Then the maintenance people, if you say you need to remove that pipe or the sleeve for maintenance and you want to replace it, scanning on the QR code will then allow the maintenance person to fill in the information, to update the information. Who was the last person to touch this assembly? And what did he do to replace the assembly? But when we got onto this project, the suppliers were not ready to give us the QR code that they promised. So we got hoodwinked lah, but never mind. So they gave us temporary tags, handwritten tags. Yeah. This one, yes. Yes, it's a sleeve. Yes, it is. Yes, it's a metal sleeve. Yes, correct. Right, so you have all these tags, and that will have the date of the installer, date of installation, and the unique ID. So without the QR code, the next time someone comes along, they have to replace this tag. After they finish it, they have to restick this tag and manually mark it on the records. Okay, then after we do that, what is the next step? The certification. This is the hard work, the documentation. Yeah, lots and lots of C forms to sign. Make sure you have to sign for every single one, every single type, and by the location to sign it off, and just make sure that the C1 and C2 also got someone real to take responsibility. Right? We need someone to take responsibility for that. So after all of this, of course, we submit and we get our CCC, hopefully. And Bomba will usually be quite impressed if you show them all this documentation already. They come on the site. Initially, they'll be a bit, they'll be a bit saying, okay, is this for real and all that? When they see the tagging, they look at the C forms, they're usually very happy because they see that we have taken in the effort and we have made sure that it's done correctly. So after the certification, what do we do? Exit, run away. No, we celebrate. We celebrate, we jump for joy, we finish our work. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope this has been a enlightening session. Yeah. Just Yes, yes. There's a block that's called a intermittent block. Like class C. Like class C. It comes blocks